All right, so in our previous session, we looked at how we can use the prototype methods in objects in JavaScript and got a basic understanding of how inheritance and object-oriented programming in JavaScript works. Today, we are going to look at how we can create your own array using this prototype inheritance. So let's get started by creating your function. All right, I'm going to call it my array. I'm going to give it this dot length. I'm going to give it 0 initially. Now let's define the methods that we need to create. So we can look at push, pop, and we can probably do the array.map also. So let's go ahead and create our prototype method for push. So let's assume this takes only one item here, and we can create a function here which takes one item. We can use the this property here, and we know this dot length is 0 initially. And we know arrays essentially store information with index value pairs. So 0, 1, 2, it goes on like that. So what we can do is, since we know that this refers to the object that's calling it, we can set this of this dot length is equal to the element that I pass in, and we can increment this dot length. And as a functionality after pushing, we can also return the new length of the array. So let's just create a new array for us. So new my array. And when we run this program, let's also console that value. And we get this new array, which has some length property in it. So let's also now try to see how we can see that value. So we can say array dot push. Let's start to give it some values. So let's say we have to pass in Masai. And now we would run this program, we would get this information saying that the 0th value or zero key has Masai on it. And if I had to pass array of 0, I would get Masai on it. So let's push a few more items on it. And I'm going to say array of 1. I'm getting all those values here. Let's go ahead and remove also some values. So let's do the pop operation right now. We don't need to pass the element actually. We just need to remove that last item. So we know in the pop element, we return the item that is being removed also. So let's store that pop element is equal to this of this dot length. So it's actually -1. So let's just remove this dot length minus. From here we can delete this of this dot length, and we can return the pop element. Let's just add Bangalore to it, and let's see what the output is going to be for array of 2, and we get Bangalore there. and let's do an array of pop. And now we get Bangalore is undefined. So array of 2 does not exist. And if you were to write console log of ARR, we get this as the output. And our length goes back to 2. All right, so let's now look at how we can do myArray.prototype.map. Now, before that, we also notice one more thing in this array is that we can see this length property inside your myArray object. This is something that you don't want to have. Now, object has a way of creating a property which is something called enumerable. If you go through the for an object, the foreign loops, you would understand that it what the output of foreign is basically it loops through all the numerable properties of an object. Now, if I were to write key in ARR and write console.log of key comma ARR of key, you would get this. So these mean that these are all enumerable properties. So let's see how we can remove that. Now, object has a object.define property. So it takes a couple of arguments. One is the reference of the object. So we can pass in this over there. The second argument is the name of the property. And the third are the initial properties or a definition or description of what the property does. So let's look at that. So instead of having this dot length, I want to create like this. And this attributes of that property is what we are describing here. So our initial value can be given as 0. It can take a enumerable property. So I'm going to give it as false. I'm going to make writable true because we want to modify the value as true or false. We want to modify the value, so we make it writable as true. So we have written this now where we have defined that the length property is enumerable as false. And we're going to remove this part of it. And let's check that again. Oops, array of key. And you find that the length is no more seen here in the enumerable properties. We can do the same for push, pop, and map also, but I'm not going to do that right now. All right, so now let's look at our map function. What does our array.map do? When you do an array, or when you make your own array here, what essentially happens is that when you do array.map, you are passing in a callback, right? Or you're writing this function here. So what we need to write here, we need to write a callback, or we can call it CB here. Now it needs to iterate through each and every element in this particular object method or object. So what we can write is for key in this. Now, just to give it a little more understanding of arrays, we'll just call it index instead of key. Now, we saw earlier that that this was still printing the enumerable properties. One way is to make sure that we don't go through the enumerable properties. The other option is that the object has another property called this has or has own property. So you can write has own property, and we can pass in if that index is actually part of the particular object's property, or if it's a parent property. If it's a parent, then it doesn't come under has own property. So if it belongs to that object, then this becomes true, otherwise it becomes false. So in this case, for push, pop, and map, it doesn't iterate through it. So now for every index in this object, and if it belongs to its own property, or if that index is of its own property, then we can invoke that callback. And we know that map essentially takes in a couple of arguments. It takes the first, the current element. It takes the index and the array itself. So what I can write here is I can pass in this dot index. I can pass in the index value, and I can pass in the array itself over there. Now, if I were to write array.map and I write function, we get those values here. Let's remove these also out of it. Messiah and school. But there is something we know about map is that map actually returns a value, right? It returns an array. So let's create our own array here. So let's create new of my array. And whatever the return value of this callback should be pushed inside the result object. And we're going to return result here. Now, let's call it res. And let's log res after this. Let's return. So let's just make it some values. And let's take the square of the values. So you can see that now we have got the square of the values in this result through array.map. So you have created the basic functionalities of an array. As an exercise, I would like you to work on the other methods that you have to create all the properties of the array. So I hope this was an interesting session, and I hope you have an understanding of how arrays work and how arrays are actually just objects. They are again come under special objects.